Gosh, I should pick something else up other than a Zoom. Do you hear me? Because I don't hear anybody.
Yeah, that's okay, Diane. We're going to get started in just a
Oh,
second
good.
here.
And
Yes,
I hear you
welcome. We're so
loud.
pleased that you're here with us. This is a real treat. This is a real treat.
This
And
good, good topic.
well, yes. And as a tax professional, you have more than a passing interest in this particular topic, I know. So
Indeed.
that's a good thing. But I think what I'm going to do is Crystal's got other folks that she's admitting, but let's get started here. And because we have a lot of ground to cover during our session. So first of all, I just want to say good afternoon and welcome everyone to our resilience workshop. It's called Cybersecurity Equals Company Security. Change your company's culture now or pay for it later. It's presented by Jason Gray, Director of Solutions for OpsTech Alliance. My name is Lisa Smith. I'm the Executive Director of the Bowie Business Innovation Center. We're a hub for business acceleration with offices at Bowie State University. And this afternoon's session is part of a recently launched Bowie Business Recovery program. It's 8 months of technical assistance for companies that would be interested in counseling, training, webinars, roundtables, workshops, and even a CEO accelerator to help businesses in Bowie accelerate their recovery from the pandemic. To see the upcoming calendar of events, you can visit our website. There are multiple activities every week now, and that website is bowiebusinessrecovery.com. You can also access the recording of this session on the site. And in fact, you can access the recordings of all the public sessions through that are being conducted on behalf of the Bowie Business Recovery Program on the site, bowiebusinessrecovery.com. In December of 2020, many of you may have seen the news reports about the biggest hack of the US government and many large corporations. So I'm thinking that today's session will be of special interest to our business owners. Our speaker today is Jason Gray, Director of Solutions for Cybersecurity Services and Training at OpsTech Alliance. OpsTech's clients really are members of the Intel community as well as corporate company clients that they have. And I was really pleased when I started talking with Jason about this to realize that he really brings the right combination of both practical experience with hacking, because he is a certified ethical hacker, and a deep understanding of the security needs of enterprises, and that includes corporations. Today's session is the first in a series of 3 sessions that Jason's going to be conducting over one session a week for the next 3 weeks. With different aspects of security and security considerations. So I'd say let's get started. If everyone would please put themselves on mute so we don't have any background noise. We already have a question posted for folks, and so we'll be doing occasional polling during this session. And you can put your questions in the chat box if you don't want to ask them, or you can ask as we go along. Jason has graciously said that he'd be happy to entertain questions at any point during our session. So having said all of that, Jason, I think I should just say over to you. Thank you very much.
Excellent. Thank you, Lisa. Again, I'm Jason Gray. I'm the Director of Solutions for OpsTech Alliance. Just want to thank everybody who could make it. Special appreciation for the VIC for coordinating this event and letting OTA participate. So Lisa's already kind of hit the nail on the head today. We're going to talk about cybersecurity culture. It's part 1 of a 3-part series. And later on, we'll follow on with a little bit more technical hands-on techniques that we can do to secure our physical devices, laptops, phones, tablets, as well as our communications from those devices. But today we're really focusing on culture, that behavior. And basically, what we want to do is improve our culture today so that tomorrow we're not paying a heftier price, right? We're going to nip it in the bud, if you will, so that way tomorrow we survive the next big hack. So a little bit about me. I spent 19 years in the Army between active duty, National Guard, and the last 14 have been with the United States Special Operations Command and subordinate units. So currently I'm the 19th Special Forces Group training guy for cyber, electromagnetic warfare, that type of work. But for the large part of the global war on terror, that's kind of been my job, is to go out and find the enemy, find their vulnerabilities, and hack them. Whether this is from a desk, on the other side of the world, or whether it's boots on the ground going forward with special operations forces to go find, fix, and finish the enemy. So that's kind of my military background. Since I've been working with OTA, we've been able to really kind of reflect on and draw on those experiences in order to kind of help provide security, improve secure postures for our business partners, our employees, and our clients. So some of the roles, some of the hats I wear, because we are a small business. I help lead training. We do very similar training to this. Typically we'll do 40-hour, a 1 week, 2 week, 3 week, just how do I secure myself going forward? I'm a very special person with a very special mission, and I'm going into this questionable location. What is the best practices to help me secure myself in my communications? So that's one part of my job. The other part, we build a lot of custom software solutions for the intelligence community, for the Special Operations Command, just to kind of help them on that technical side of how do I help obfuscate me and my activities. We do a lot of VPN technologies, we do a lot of virtualization, and these custom tailored solutions. And then the last part, right, is the day-to-day operations, right? How do I make sure that we're compliant with all the security controls that we need to meet? How do I make sure that we're on the cutting edge? We're doing all of our training and awareness. We're writing blogs to help the community out, and I'll talk about our blogs pretty often throughout this brief. Without mentioning much further ado, I guess we'll kick this off by exploring a little bit of what this deployed culture looks like. So again, we're focusing mostly on cybersecurity culture, but I think it's a good idea to take a look at the culture that I come from, right? And that's getting into the right mindset, right? I've heard culture called this is how we do business here. It's just the way things are done, right? And your culture, when you go forward, when you're in a hostile environment, right, you need to be very mindful of your surroundings, right? You're on alert, you're not paranoid, but you are questioning, right? You need to be aware of what's going on around you. You need to be conscious of, your left and right. So cautiousness generally. And those behaviors are kind of ingrained in, folks like me, because throughout training and through our learned experiences, it just becomes second nature. We just learn, how to respond. And it becomes so important because, when you're forward, when you're in a hostile environment, any kind of accidents, any kind of, incident that's caused by negligence could result in loss of life, right? And that's the worst case scenario. You never want to have to, get on the helicopter to fly home missing that one guy, because he got injured, because, even worse happened. So that culture, it sticks with you, right? And it becomes a very important part of life. So what I was hoping to do was kind of translate that culture of, just kind of being curious, being cautious, and translate that to, us as like small business members, what we need to do in the cybersecurity world, right? Because you don't know it, but you're in combat every day, right? There's people all day, every day, trying to get a hold of your information, right? It might not be targeted, it may not be, illicit and specific, but it's still happening, right? There's still people hitting your public-facing infrastructure, trying to learn more about you. So I wanted to kind of translate that culture into cybersecurity culture. Some of the best habits that we can kind of instill in our, our own organizations, our own small businesses, is, maybe not being cautious of the next step, but being a little skeptical of everything we see. I just got an email. Is that really originating with who it says it is? Is it a potential phishing email? Avoiding shortcuts. This is something I talk about all the time in our classes, and that is convenience is a vulnerability. If something is convenient to you, if there's a shortcut, if there's a way around a process, chances are you're opening yourself up unnecessarily, right? So if you're having good habits for cybersecurity, generally you want to go through those procedures that are given to you. You know, follow these steps. Don't cut out steps 3 and 4. You know, again, convenience is a vulnerability. That's just pretty much my big takeaway from this slide. We also want to ask for guidance. Too often, you know, some kind of incident will happen and the response will be, well, I was told to do that. That's not always a good answer, right? That doesn't really hold up in court, right? Due care, due diligence, these are things we need to be mindful of. But just, you know, pointing fingers and saying, I was told to do that, right? So taking pause to recognize we might not understand everything that's being asked of us. You know, my bank asked me to sign something. Did they mean print it off and sign it digitally? Do they mean to click the button, right? I'm going to follow up and ask questions, right? I don't want to cause any undue grief or, you know, potential cybersecurity issues. There's a little mention of a policy here. Ideally, the whole enterprise of your business, whether it's a two-person show or, you know, a 500-person business, should have some sort of policy written on paper that you can point to and say, this is why we do this. It'll be very broad, high level. There's not a lot of specific details, but it kind of helps, you know, capture that culture. And it's always something that you can reference and lean on. And then finally here, awareness and training. The big takeaway here, I think, is just like, you know, these deployed soldiers, special operations guys who are routinely going forward, you know, after the bad guy. When they come home, we train. That's what we do. In the Army, you have what we call a training calendar, and you train, and then you go to war, and then you come back and you train, right? And the reason for that is, right, we always need to be on our game, right? You need to be aware of the next threat. You need to always be ready and always be developing new tactics, techniques, and procedures. In cybersecurity, it's a little bit different, right? I can't just learn something one time and then say, oh, I'm good to go. I understand phishing attacks, right? Because phishing attacks evolve. The threat landscape evolves. Our tactics and techniques to prevent and block and mitigate those risks evolve over time, right? So awareness and training is something that needs to be revisited routinely, right? It needs to always be on the forefront of your mind. What I like to do is subscribe to like CISA, right? The government CISA, and they send out, you know, daily or weekly reminders of, hey, here's what's latest in the news, right? Here's your awareness for the day. And then we'll, you know, periodically we'll roll that into some training, and we'll go out there and make sure everyone knows the best practices and what those threats look like. So those I think would be like the good foundation of what cybersecurity culture is. Being a little cautious, going through the full procedures and not taking shortcuts, looking at policy and asking questions when you don't know, and then staying abreast of the latest news and making sure that, you know, that's spread out across your organization. And the reason we're looking for these good habits for cybersecurity is, right, it results again in accidents, negligent incidents, and that leads to harm for the business, right? So now we're talking about potential loss of revenue, intellectual property, time, your perception, public perception and reputation, right? That could be huge, right? Or OPSEC Alliance, if we go get hacked, that's not good, right? Especially if we get hacked because someone does something silly or negligent, right? So reputation's a big one. Some stats here we have on the next page is that the majority of incidents that actually cause harm to businesses are actually caused from inside of the organization. Generally, when we're thinking of hackers, we're thinking of cybersecurity, we're thinking of people outside of the organization and attacking in. I want to say the lion's share is actually people inside doing something silly, and then the outside capitalizes on that, right? So those accidental incidents, we call them insider threats. Looks like we got a question here. So with regards to cybersecurity culture and insider threats, I found these numbers to be pretty shocking, right? So for small businesses, based on a 2020 Ponemon study, I think they had like 2,000 businesses with fewer than 500 people. They said that the average insider-related incident cost them almost 2 months of time and over $500,000 in lost money. And I don't know if that's in revenue, if that's for paying the bills, if that's legal fees or what, but $500,000 plus in 2 months of time for something that could be, as easy as having your employees update their passwords, knowing that your employees are using VPN technologies. And we'll talk about some of these more technical things in a few minutes. There's an interesting stat here, this third bullet, 63% of insider incidents were due to negligence, right? Just not doing the right thing, taking the shortcut, right? And that's staggering to me, right? That reflects poor culture, right? Poor communication, poor culture for these organizations. And then this last bullet here, the frequency of insider incidents is positively correlated with organizational size. It's a whole mouthful for me to just say, get smart while you're small. You know, while you're a 5 individual business, everyone gets on the same page, because when you are 25 individuals, you know, in 2 years, you'll be better off, right? If we have bad habits starting off, they're only going to get worse as we continue to grow. Let me close this book. Cool. So that's, I was hoping that would at least be like an attention grabber of like why this is even necessary. Is some of the cost, both in treasure and in time, can be pretty significant. So one thing I want to talk about here is how that culture that we have downrange, it also translates back home, right? So we call that redeployment. I deploy overseas and then I redeploy back home. And when I get home, there isn't some special switch to turn it off, right? We might tamper it down. We might be a little bit more milder, right, with my kids and family, but it's still there in the back of my head, right? That mindfulness at all times. So it's a good thing to have, right? You can see here, he's in a training situation, right? But you can see he's dressed up to be in like an urban environment. He's got his laptop, he's just going to work, and he has to react, right? And that's because he has this culture built into his head of, hey, I need to be aware. It's something can go down anytime. He's actually practicing for it now. So nice. Good stats here. We're about to talk about passwords in just a second. I'll come back to that. Cool. So that culture, you know, that deployed culture, coming home and also being mindful, that should also apply to cybersecurity culture, right? What you do at the office, you should also do at home, right? Because you're also vulnerable at home, right? When we're downrange and we're going after a guy, chances are I'm going to go after his place of work if he's there from 9 to 5. But more likely, I'm going to go to his house, right? So to me, that means we need to practice good cybersecurity, have good cybersecurity practices, and have that mindful culture, not just at the office, but also at home, right? That's where I'm affecting my targets. At the office, I have to worry about security controls. I have to worry about an IT staff. I have to worry about all these different physical blockers and barriers. At home, I can go park behind you, and I can sniff your Wi-Fi, and I can do whatever I want, right? So at home, I think is where you're much more vulnerable. And that brings up COVID-19, right? As I kind of understand it, the whole point of these seminars is to kind of like bounce back, right? We're stepping into a new year. COVID-19 is hopefully on its way out. We'll see, but you know, how do we recover from this? Well, while we're still in it, we need to kind of recognize like there's a lot of things have changed, right? There's no more sanctuary for these employees to go to, right? They're not all going to the office from 9 to 5. A lot of them are working remotely from home. And that means that, you know, they're in these different environments. All that they have between them and a bad guy is a single wireless router, right? They don't have the crazy firewalls and intrusion protection systems, all the stuff that, you know, happens in the background with these IT people. Instead, it's just them and their little router that, you know, Verizon dropped off. So definitely something to consider, you know, is now they're at home, their children are at home, we have this shared environments, and they have very limited protections. There's one case, my boss and I were talking about it earlier, where, you know, the kids are online streaming because they're trying to take their class. The spouse is working, she's in her VTCs and this you know, video teleconference. And the guy's like, I have to get out of here. I gotta work. The internet is so slow, I can't conduct business. So he goes to Panera and he takes his work laptop and he connects it to the Panera internet. And not exactly the best thing, right? There's new threats there. Now we're not even dealing with people going to your house. We're dealing with people potentially lying in wait. Just hanging out at Panera with the sole purpose of you know, hacking people, interfering with people, stealing things from people. So what we like to talk about, we're going to get a little bit more technical. We're going to look at 6 different areas across 3 separate domains. And again, these are just wave tops, right? We typically teach like a 40-hour, 80-hour, 120-hour class, depending on requirements. So we're really just touching on the wave tops. But something I want to bring up is we have a blog that's part of my weekly task is figure out what's going on and what are people interested in. So if you go to OPSECalliance.com, I'll share a link with you later, but OPSECalliance.com, you can navigate to the blogs directory. We have probably 30, 40 or so, and they're pretty robust. They get into, you know, not just what is a good password or how do I make a good password, but how do I make the best passwords? What are some attacks that hackers are using to defeat passwords? What's a password manager? Right, it kind of goes pretty deep. So wealth of resources there on the blog site. But going into this, you know, we only have a few more minutes, or another 30 minutes. I want to talk about passwords, hardening, and data protection. And those are things that are mostly happening here on my laptop. They're happening on my tablet and my phone, right? Those are things I can do very locally. Next, we'll talk about virtual private networks, or VPNs, and Wi-Fi, right? Wi-Fi is ubiquitous, and it's my favorite thing in the world. Like, coming from my background, that's the most fun thing. So we're probably going to talk too much about Wi-Fi, but I'm excited about it. And those are going to deal with our network domain. So the network is how we're effectively communicating from outside this device to other devices, right? So we want to make sure that's secure as possible. And then finally, once we're out on the internet, we're going to talk about online phishing, and that's going to dovetail into social engineering, social media, sharing too much, and also kind of, you know, auditing your family, because they could also absolutely share too much. So without any delay, we'll get into some of the more technical stuff here. And it's a very lightweight technical, but passwords. All right, so the first thing we're going to talk about, passwords, right? I like that Lisa brought up SolarWinds, right? That was that attack that happened just last month. And that was facilitated by hackers looking at the SolarWinds website and saying, they're asking for a password. Let me try SolarWinds 1. That didn't work. How about SolarWinds 2? And eventually they guessed the right password. And that provided access into this network where they started to do more work. They started to do more hacker work, right? And so as, you know, as someone who comes from that offensive side, that, you know, I'm trying to take advantage of you and own everything I can, get my hands onto all of your files, all of your infrastructure. I'm trying to collect intel. Passwords are huge to me, right? Passwords are the keys to the castle. So there was a poll question earlier. Do you reuse your passwords, right? And the reason for that is, if I compromise your Facebook, you know, it's just you talk to your grandkids, you talk to your parents on Facebook, but if I compromise that and I go and it also opens up your business email account, it also opens up your you know, your Amazon account for your business, or, you know, wherever you purchase your products. Now we're talking about some serious implications here, right? So we got to think about password is the reason it's number one is because it's critical. It's one of the weakest links in cybersecurity. Something I was talking to my guys about recently is, you know, they're pouring their heart and their energy into building the secure software for one of our customers. And at the very end, we tell the customer, go ahead, you make the password. So if they use a bad password, we're going to throw away all this energy and effort and money and time that we had spent into building a secure platform. So we're going to force them to basically use good passwords. And what is a good password? So here you can see I have something that says length is better than complexity, right? So sometimes people tell you, oh, just use a bunch of gibberish and smash it all out. That could be a really good password. It could also be very difficult to remember. Oftentimes it's just easier to string together a handful of words, maybe throw in a couple special characters, a couple of numbers. Again, if you visit our blog, you'll see a really good breakdown of how to generate decent, strong, complex passwords. But then once you do have more than one password, once you're using more than one email account or more than one, you know, social media account, whatever it is, they start to build up, right? And what you don't want to do, what you don't want your employees to do, is have a notepad on their desktop that says LinkedIn, this password, you know, ExoStar, this password, whatever these like shared resources are that your company uses. That's no good, right? That's the opposite of having a good culture. So it might be beneficial to look into something like a password manager. And a password manager does just that, right? It helps manage, create, really just simplifies your life. So the way that I use it, I have a single really long password. I remember it, renew it every now and then. And then, from there, once I get access to it, I say, oh, I'm trying to access my Google account. And it remembered my Google account password. And when I update it, it stores it and it saves it. It also does some auditing too. So it'll actually go out to the dark web, into the onion router, and it'll figure out, has any of these words that we have, any of these passwords, have they been compromised? Are they being found through other lists? So definitely can't recommend password managers enough. And then finally, we have multi-factor authentication, or two-factor authentication, sometimes called. And what that is, right? You put in your name, your password, and then you get a text message, and it says, "Hey, is this you?" Or, "Hey, here's a 6-digit PIN." And then you have to enter that 6-digit PIN, right? This is probably the most secure way to authenticate yourself, because you're demonstrating you are you. I am me because I have my password and I have my phone, or I have my password and I have my little RSA token, I think they call them. So when it comes down to having the best culture, really what we're looking for is just best practices here. MFA is probably the best. Individual passwords, it's okay, right? You can still absolutely be hacked. But if you start using things like a password manager, it helps take care of that process a little bit. Helps kind of smooth that out. All right. So that was number one. Also on our workstations here, on our endpoint devices, this is something that is too easy. It's probably the easiest thing we're going to talk about, and that is update your software. Update your operating system, update your hardware if it's available. You'll have firmware. And the reason for that is, as an attacker, for me, I'm looking for the weakest person in the room. If you haven't updated, that means that chances are there's known vulnerability. There's known chinks in your armor, and you haven't bothered to do the security patch. You haven't bothered to allow your computer to restart, and it updates and secures all of your software. So for me, like the way I kind of describe this is, I'm going to a bar, I've had a bad day, I'm going to get into a fight tonight, but I'm going to check out who's in the bar with me. I'm not going to go after muscles. I'm not going to go after the lady who does Krav Maga. I'm going to go after the skinny guy in the corner drinking milk, right? He's the guy who hasn't updated his stuff. He's the guy who still has security known vulnerabilities because he hasn't patched his operating system in 6 months, right? So easiest thing to do, automate your updates, right? Go down to the bottom right-hand corner, top right-hand corner, whatever it is you're using, and say, yes, update automatically at 2 o'clock while I'm sleeping. You start, it's the easiest tip that you can follow. And then updates go hand in hand with something we call hardening. So hardening is removing items from your security posture. So what does that mean? An example would be on this laptop, I have 15 programs. I only use 2. But those other 13, I have to continue to remember to update them. Some of them are automatic. Sometimes my Wi-Fi fails and it crashes and I don't get this patch. Well, that means to an attacker, I now have 15 possible attack vectors, things that I can go after, right? And as a hacker, what I'm looking for is, can I compromise this person's password? Can I compromise their Wi-Fi? Can I send them a phishing email? Can I get in close and get to be friends with their kids and learn more about them? Their adult age kids, and learn more about them. Socially engineer them. I'm looking for every possible avenue that I can. So by hardening our systems, we're removing old apps, we're removing and disabling old accounts. So that way, when my son moves out of the house, I don't have to worry about the Judd account. I'm going to remove the Judd account because there's a chance that gets hacked and I don't know any better because I'm not logging into his account every day, right? So hardening it takes a process, you should probably Google it. There's a lot of resources out there. Our blogs have information, but as a cyber offensive person, what I'm really looking for are who hasn't updated their systems and who has so much, trash, unused software, unused software accounts that I can start, instead of focusing on just 3 attack vectors, I might get 15 attack vectors. So that's kind of the benefit of hardening. You're reducing that footprint, that signature. All right, that brings us to the last of our endpoint devices, and that's data protection. So a lot of these operating systems, whether you're using Mac OS or Windows, even Linux, right, a lot of them offer some kind of full disk encryption. What that means is when you power down your laptop, somebody gets a hold of it and they try logging into it, or they try putting in a USB and getting into your files, everything is gibberish to them. They can't read it. It makes no sense. It's protecting the confidentiality of your data. So I highly recommend looking at and possibly investing in full disk encryption, some kind of software that provides that. And that's the whole system. There's other options, right? Probably the easiest one to talk about is, if you're familiar with Microsoft Office, PowerPoint, Excel, you can go up and you can encrypt an individual file. So let's say I'm working on a spreadsheet and I need to send it to my boss. Well, I might go in there, protect it, create a good password, based off of our password discussion, and email it out to my boss. And then he gets it, he can't open it, so he calls me up and says, hey, what's the password? Well, here, I'll text it to you. Right? I'm not going to send my password in the same file, in the same email as I send that file, right? That would not be smart. But the whole point is, again, to protect that confidentiality of this data. So that way, if something gets lost, if you lose your laptop or if it's stolen, people might be able to get in to your operating system. They figure out your password somehow, but they can't open up your Excel spreadsheets. Or, if you're using full disk encryption, they can't figure out anything. Right? They can't get into the operating system, period. So that's kind of the point of this encryption is to keep your data safe, right? As a targeter, what I'm looking for is unencrypted data to create intelligence, right? I need to answer my bosses. He has a goal, and those goals have gaps. Those gaps are called intel gaps. So I'm going to go out there and I'm going to harvest as much information as I can get, analyze it, and answer that, right? That's intelligence. For us, it might be business data. It might be social security numbers that we need to protect of our employees. It might be financials, right? It might be intellectual property, right? So data protection is huge, right? That's probably like the key purpose of cybersecurity, is to protect what's on this laptop. I saw something interesting where it's like, oh yeah, we did some business analysis, business impact. Each laptop was $1,000. It's like, no, the laptop might be 1,000, but the data on top of it is hundreds of hours of work, thousands of hours of work, collaboration. These laptops are far more valuable than the actual metal that they're used in manufacturing. One more note here, backing up important data, right? So here in 2021, we use the cloud, right? And the cloud is just a polite way to say someone else's computer. I back my stuff up into someone else's computer, but I also back it up into removable media, right? So whether it's a thumb drive that I've encrypted and I put my financials on, or it's all of our 2018 CRM, our customer relationships matrix. I want to back that stuff up just for archive, burn it to a disk, right? I'm removing that stuff out of the machine, and I'm going to keep it secure somewhere in a safe. And the reason for that is you've probably heard of something called ransomware, right? Well, one, my machine could just break, right? These things are not built to last forever. They will break over time. But there's something called ransomware. And if you live close to Baltimore and you're familiar with the city and their history, ransomware is pretty devastating, right? And what that is you're being compromised by some sort of threat. And what they're doing is they're going through your file system, your C drive, your D drive, and they're looking for, all right, what's the most valuable? Your D drive? Well, I just encrypted it. And now you have to give me a password to get your files back. Well, I've been compromised. Everything you have in this folder, I've updated, I backed up. I don't need that. So I'm not paying you the $5,000 in Bitcoin or $10,000 in Amazon gift cards that you want, right? I'm going to report you to the FBI. I'm going to wipe my computer, and I'm going to go get my USB and I'm going to restore all my data back, right? So just something to be aware of, right? And we'll talk a little bit more about ransomware in the next couple of slides. So VPNs, I love VPNs. As a user, as an attacker, VPNs really get in my way. Doing boots on the ground, if my target starts using a VPN, I kind of have to stop what I'm doing, right? I can no longer see. So what that means to me as a business person, we need to be using VPN, virtual private network. right? Provides encryption to your data as it transits the internet, and it prevents people like me, like Wi-Fi sniffers, from learning what it is that you're doing, right? It also prevents like your internet service provider. Like here we have Verizon. Verizon can't see what I'm searching for because I'm using a VPN. And it also helps you mask your location from websites and trackers. And I'd like to show you what that looks like here. So real quick, when you're online and you're interacting with a website, let's say there's a store in New Zealand, that store can learn from you your public IP address, which kind of is associated with your neighborhood. So it looks like here I'm in North Carolina, and they can see, hey, he's coming from North Carolina, he's got a Windows machine, he's using Chrome as his browser, he uses English as his language set. They learn a lot of information, and it's a one-to-one, you know, we're talking directly to each other. When you introduce this VPN, we're introducing like a man in the middle or some kind of proxy. So I have secure communications from my location in North Carolina over here to Asia, and then from Asia, this server is doing all the business. He's the one that's communicating on my behalf to that web server. So the web server thinks I'm in India. The web server thinks that I'm using a Linux server or whatnot. You know, there's other obfuscation techniques you can use to get around that as well. But that's the real beauty is everything here is secured, and then this person at the end, they don't know the source. They will never know where you're coming from if you have the correct configurations. But generally, you know, it's good online security. It prevents someone like me from attacking your Wi-Fi, which is what I said was my favorite. So joining a Wi-Fi network, like we talked about earlier, you know, going to Panera and setting up and doing work, not good, right? You don't own that network. You don't know who else is in that network, right? Once you jump in that swimming pool, you're in there with whoever else made it, right? Whoever else shows up, right? So it could be the kid with the skin knee and he's got a bunch of, just nastiness, right? You don't know. You don't have any control of it, right? So my word of caution for you is to avoid free Wi-Fi, right? If you're in a pinch and you're out and you can't connect to your home internet or you can't connect to your business internet, use your phone's mobile hotspot, right? Connect to that, trust the 4G, 5G, it's good stuff, it's secure. And the reason for that is it's too easy to eavesdrop on open public Wi-Fi. It's too easy to track people based off of Wi-Fi. One more thing, you know, even if you're in Panera and you're using a VPN, that's fine. We can't see your communications necessarily, but I can see your laptop, and I can see that you're using an outdated version of a video game. You haven't updated it in 6 months, and I can probably infect your system because I know that information, right? So joining that public network, it's just generally not a good idea. One thing I recommend for folks is whenever you leave your house, turn off your Wi-Fi. Whenever you get back home, turn on your Wi-Fi, right? And there's a couple of reasons for that. One, your phone announces kind of places where it's been, right? So for me, if someone is sitting outside the BIC and I've just arrived, it might say something like, my phone is barking out, where's Jason's house? Where's BWI? Where's Delta Airlines, right? And these are all the different networks that I previously connected to. So that kind of builds a profile about an individual. Close this guy. Okay. So yeah, highly recommend turning it off. Then another thing, another attack. I wasn't planning on talking about this, but if my phone is saying, where's Delta? Where's Delta? And there's a hacker nearby, he could say, oh, Jason's trying to get on Delta. And he goes to his computer and he types it up and he goes, I'm Delta. And his computer becomes Delta. And then all of a sudden my phone connects to his laptop, which is connected to the internet. I don't know any better because my phone's in my pocket and it just goes, oh, cool, internet. I can now download my files. I can update my email. And everything that I'm doing is now going through this individual's computer, this hacker's computer. So generally, disable your Wi-Fi. It's, you know, you don't need it unless you're at home connected to it. And then when you're at home, on your network, I recommend using strong passwords, right? Just like we did previously, strong passwords everywhere you can. That's the key to the castle. And then there's different types of encryption. What we're going to look for is called WPA2. That's like the minimum you want to use, and then WPA3 is the new version. Anything older than that, it's deprecated WPA web. It's not considered secure. Just one more quick little vignette, right? We were doing work with some big hitters out of Silicon Valley. They wanted a cyber assessment from like a special operations perspective. So we did a little ride along. They were doing some business to business work with a foreign company. We go into this foreign company's business. Executive pulls out his laptop and says, "Can I have the password to your Wi-Fi?" So here's this unknown entity who owns the network. Potentially, taking full advantage of this big wig and his executive information on his laptop, right? A good cyber culture would have been, hey, I'm going to need these files before going into this place. I'm going to go ahead and download them or even print them off, so I don't have to bring my laptop into this, foreign organization's building. All right, now finally, we're on the internet. Phishing, right? We've all heard of phishing. We do a pretty interesting breakdown of a phishing attack in the OTA blogs, but phishing is everywhere, right? If you go to your Gmail or your Yahoo and you go to your spam folder, there's probably hundreds and thousands of phishing attacks, right? And the intent for that is, it's a criminal or, we'll call them a bad actor. And they're masquerading who they are with the intent of scamming you, right? They might be stealing business or personal data, banking info, if they're doing something like I'm doing, they might be delivering something like a malicious file. So when you download that file, it starts running something in the background and it takes control of your machine, right? That's more what I would use phishing for. I don't care, to convince someone to send me $50 in cryptocurrency. I want to compromise your machine. I want to own that laptop so that way I can own everything else in your network. That's my view of a phishing attack. The best way to kind of mitigate that, right, is to kind of just pause and catch your breath and look at them, right? Generally, they have misspelled words, bad grammar, the graphics are strange. It'll say like, here's a link to Amazon.com, and it takes you to xyz.io or .coza or something, some unknown domain. That doesn't make sense, right? Things shouldn't add up. Another thing, right? Separate your personal and your business accounts. You don't want to cross-contaminate. It's just bad news. And then, probably most importantly, right, for people like me, I need you to download something. If I'm going to send you something nefarious through phishing, I need you to click on something. So don't click on anything. Don't download anything. Don't go through any links. If you weren't expecting an email with an attachment, deny it. Call the person, right? Pick them up. Right? One of our good habits was actually picking up and reaching out to people and saying, hey, I don't understand. So that would be a good step. And then of course at the end, block and report. That kind of helps out the community. One more thing here, phishing and most cyber attacks generally, they improve in success rates when they start factoring in things like social engineering, right? So social engineering is someone trying to elicit information from you, trying to learn and gather more about you. So if I know that your dog's name is Schmooky and your brother's birthday or your girlfriend's birthday is May 30th, when I'm trying to guess your password, you can guarantee Schmooky and May 30th are going to be somewhere involved in there, right? The more I know about you, the better. Something I like to do, right, is try and guess people's password or try resetting people's password, right? We do this in exercises with my military unit. And, I'm trying to get into someone's Facebook account and it says, what's your mother's maiden name? Well, it's in your email address. Right? Your middle name is your mother's maiden name, so I know that. What's your birthday? Oh, man, I don't know. But I am friends with your wife, and I do know that she posted happy birthday to you. So I'm going to go on to social media and figure out when your birthday is and answer that question, right? So we've got to be really cautious about what we put out there because that information can be used against us into creating a more effective phishing attack, right? I get some pretty convincing emails from folks attempting to phish me. And it's, it just gives them that much of an edge that they can go out onto the public space and figure out what data you're sharing with them, right? And then that kind of comes back to your family. We want to be careful that, all the practices that you're learning should also kind of flow down to the spouse and the kids or anyone else who's in the house using your networks and your devices. right? I could have the best security in the world, but my kid could mess everything up for me, right? That's not how we went after Bin Laden. We didn't find Bin Laden and go after him. We found like the guy who brought him his mail, right? Just like in a company, I'm not going to go for the head of the company. I'm not going for the CEO. I'm not going for the IT department. I'm going to go for the custodian. I'm going to go for, you know, someone who's there in a, you know, the receptionist who might not have the same culture as everyone else, right? They're just not aware. So definitely pass that information on to your family. Improve that culture at home. So just to wrap this up here, how do we shape culture, right? We talked about a few different like technical steps, a few different things that we've seen come up recently, some hacks and stuff that I've personally been a part of. Really the best way to kind of shape culture in your small business, right, is to build those cybersecurity processes, make sure that they align with your business practices, right? If it's all one nice, smooth flowing process, it's easy, right? You don't have to think about it. It's already baked in, right? Make sure that we have the policies that address the different issues that we've covered. And there's tons more issues, right? We just plucked an hour's worth to discuss today. And then enforce those policies as well, right? Make sure people are living up to it. Doesn't mean anything if it's just written on paper. Training, especially hands-on training, is invaluable, right? That's what we do. If we're not deployed, we're training, right? We have to learn the next thing, right? We have to make sure that we're keeping up with the enemy. So routine training and awareness, can't say enough about it. Top-down support. In our company, it's without a doubt, right? What would Ruby do, right? My boss's name, the owner, president, CEO of our company, Ruby, just a wealth of knowledge with this stuff. So he sets the pace, he sets the tempo for the whole rest of the company. So every time I'm about to do something, I stop and be like, does this make sense? Is this sensible? What would Ruby do, right? And then at the same time, bottom up, right? He's driving the ship, right? He's got the vision of the company. He doesn't have the time to go figure out, hey, there's this new Google hack. Hey, this router that we bought for the office actually needs a firmware update, right? We need bottom up input. We need people who have their feelers out there to help feed that machine so we can continue to improve our culture. As I said before, our blog, try to share as much as we can. I think we probably share a little too much. But you know, the threat's evolving. I'm always going to have more content. Our blog here is at opstechalliance.com. You can check out our solutions page where we have some of the different software things that we work on. Our training page has all kinds of you can get a little feel for who I am by some of the training I help host. And then our blog is probably the best resource for everyone here if they're interested in improving their cybersecurity and cybersecurity culture. And I think that's all that I have.
Wow. Jason, that's given us an awful lot to think about, and I thought that we were ahead of the game, but I realized we're a little behind the curve at Bowie. So this is really helpful for us. Ruby has warned me about some of these things over the years, but this was having it all in one place was really, really good. And we're just kind of finishing up with a couple of polling questions about, you know, what people are hearing and saying. And we have a small group on the line, and so if there are any specific questions for Jason, now would be the time to ask them. You don't need to put them in the chat box because it's not that big a group. Any kind of quick questions? Because if you don't, I have, as the moderator, I do have a question for you that's really dumb because the clients ask me this at Bowie all the time. And that is, how do you, or what is a good way to keep track of all your passwords if you're going to keep changing them all the time? Because we've all been in offices where the sticky note has the password on it and it's stuck to the computer screen. And that's the kind of thing that, you know, would make everybody at OpsTech completely lose it. You know, they could see that. But what do you recommend small businesses? Like, what's a smart way to do that? Because I see that all the time, and I get that question.
Yeah, that's a great question because, you know, passwords are probably the most critical part of, you know, our cybersecurity posture. If you have a bad password, it's, you know, it's trash. Password managers, there's a handful out there. There's KeePass is an open source and free available one. What we use at work is 1Password. It's the number 1 followed by the password. And that one's really good for business because it's an enterprise model where the account owner can go create accounts for me and this guy and that guy and this girl. And then as we leave the company, he can just go in and remove access. But those account password managers, what they do is they save all their different passwords. And so when I navigate to, my Gmail page, it detects, hey, you're on Gmail. I know your password. You'll need us to go ahead and enter that for you. And I think it costs, dollars a month. It's really inexpensive.
It's a good investment.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, well, thank you for that. Because that is something that I know I need. That's one of my New Year's resolutions, actually. To do a better job with my passwords. Now, Diane, if you would unmute yourself, let's hear your question. Can you do that? Diane Palangan had a question for you, and she's
Okay.
prepared.
All right.
Thanks,
When you get old, you're not technologically savvy. Can you hear me now?
Oh, yes,
Yes,
absolutely.
Okay, because at one point I lost my speakers and I had to figure out how to get sound back. Okay, so I have Norton 360.
Okay.
Do I also need to put malware on my computer?
No, ma'am. So Norton 360 should include antivirus software, right? So, and that's that anti-malware. So the one thing you want to do with Norton is guarantee that it's updating, that it has all the rights and permissions to update, every night or every couple hours or whatever. And what that's going to do is going to help you update its detection, right? So as I think every 3 seconds, a new virus is made. So software like Norton, what it does is every 12 hours or so, it says, hey, here were the latest ones that were released. So that way, if you do get infected, it has the most up to date and it catches it.
Yeah,
So,
it's updating all the time. Yeah, and I do have it on automatic update. So I'm sitting here going, yay, whoa, yeah, I'm doing it. So very good. Well, the question was, because malware always comes up and says, there's an update, you should update. And I'm thinking, I don't think I need to because of Norton, but thank you for the answer.
Sure. And the program is called malware?
Yeah.
Huh.
It's called malware, I guess, because it just pops up and says malware. I can't see it on this screen because I'd have to move it and I don't know how to move it. I'm not technologically savvy, but it does come up, says it is called malware, I guess. I think I had it when I first, years ago, they were getting security things and I must have had it because it seems to transfer every time I buy a new computer.
Oh.
So, but I'm glad to know about Norton 360. That's good.
Yeah, that should be protecting you. Yeah, definitely.
Good.
Sounds like you're set up correctly.
Thank you. I'll figure out how to oh, there, that's the one. Lower my hand.
And Diane, we can talk one-on-one if you're available sometime to help figure out what malware is. It is a curious title for a software because it literally says bad guy. So.
Yeah, it does. It sounds like it is the malware. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm seeing Rodolfo. So does this mean he's about to ask a question? Yes. Unmute yourself, Rodolfo. There you go.
Hi, Jason and Lisa. Thank you for putting this together. Jason, it was a great presentation.
Okay.
I just wanted to see how can I reach back outside of this forum to you, because, for instance, we had to we are in the process of getting business with DoD, and we had to get CMMC certified, and right now we're doing only the things that are required by our contracts with our clients.
Okay.
That is basically just to be compliant with the computers and the systems provided by our clients. We need to reach that gap. So basically, when we don't have any policies or any security management plan or any of that.
Okay. Yeah. I think I can pass my information, or I think there's a chat window. We can kind of set up a time.
Probably the easiest thing, Rodolfo, is I'll just connect you with Jason directly. How about that? When this is over.
All right.
And I do have some other recommendations for you that I got this morning.
Great.
Based on your email about this too.
Thank you. Thank you.
You know, Rodolfo, Do you know if you're aiming for CMMC level 1, 2, 3? Do you know which one you're expected to be at?
I don't. I have a list of requirements that I can share with you.
Okay.
Basically, being compliant with the NIST, and I have several of the requirements from NIST 800, 171, and the like.
110 of them? Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's the 800 170-171.
Oh yeah. There's over 100 controls inside of 800.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's a lot.
There's several, and some of DFARS as well.
Yep.
Yeah, so, but I can be more specific, I think, on an email or.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Another meeting.
Thank you, Lisa.
And now on probably one more basic, for I'm even though I am technically savvy, sometimes this idea that you have to set up a VPN for doing something, for buying something on e-commerce, or understanding how a person can jump into your Wi-Fi, onto your computer through a Wi-Fi, that sometimes it feels like like outside of the understanding, right? Of the basic understanding. When I have to explain that, or when I have to really understand how that happens, can you give us an example of how that could happen really? How can someone jump into your computer from the Wi-Fi?
Very easily, right? So we want to look at as Wi-Fi as being like a shared resource, a shared pool, right? So back in the day, you had a switch, and everyone in the office had a cable running from that switch into their computers, right? When we do Wi-Fi, it turns all that into cloud. It's all wireless, so not just radios talking to radios. When radios talk, you can listen, right? And sometimes if you're at like Panera, I can listen to everything that everyone's saying, right? So at that point, I just need to listen, and I can recreate, oh, this person's on Amazon, this person's on a dating website, this one's doing email. I might not see all their content, but I can get a good feel for who's doing what, right? And then getting into like a secured, like a home internet, home Wi-Fi, it's very easy. Well, okay. If you have a bad password, it's very easy. If you have a good password, it's almost impossible. So without getting too technical, I would say the strength really relies on how good your password is to keep people out of your network.
Well, thank you. From my computer, I see my neighbors.
Oh, yeah.
My neighbor's Wi-Fi. So I guess that it would be something like that you could tap into your neighbor's.
Yeah.
Wi-Fi.
Absolutely. Yeah. Every time I go in bed and I turn up my phone and I'm searching the internet, I can see all of my neighbors, and that means they can probably see me too, right? So that means they could be collecting against me, and I have good neighbors, so, but maybe someone in a car driving by.
I think that's even more relevant now that we are all working from home.
Yeah.
And we are basically doing business, right? And so everybody, we're more accessible to everybody, if you want.
Yeah. You're not in that safe office building with security and doors and locks. Yeah, you're in your house, and someone could be behind you, parked in the woods, something. Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, definitely.
Any other questions from our group here? This is good. This is good. I want to let everybody know that Jason will be back next Wednesday and the following Wednesday, talking about other aspects of cybersecurity, security, and just practical tips for what businesses need to do to stay safe in what is a pretty rapidly changing moonscape. And I love your two of your quotes here. One about how convenience is a vulnerability, and I also love get smart while you're small. So to me, that means that every small business needs to be paying attention to this, because as they grow, they need to grow with this culture of security within their own four walls, so to speak. So that was really, really good thinking. I'm going to be using that on my company's Jason. But we will be staying in touch with all of you about upcoming events. You can read about it on our website, BowieBusinessRecovery.com. And I just want to say thank you very much, Jason, for making us stop and think about some things that are potentially tremendously more important than we're acting like they are at this point. So that's a good thing. That's a really good thing. Pandemic or not, we need to pay attention. So
yeah, thank you, Lisa. Thanks for having us.
yeah. So sorry, we'll be back 1 o'clock next Wednesday as well, and hope that you'll join us. And just say want to thanks to all, and this recording will be available on the Business Recovery website. So if you want to listen to it again or refer friends to it, and have some friends join you next time, okay? All right, great, Jason, talk to you next week. How about that?
Great.
Excellent.
All right. Thank you, Lisa. Thank you, Crystal.
Okay, bye to all.